Sometimes these 4Ps are about breaking things down. This one, episode 102, has some of that, sure. But it's also about putting things together, both literally and figuratively. And as always, feel free to comment, remark, share feedback, ask a question, or pose a challenge in the comments section below. A sad but common fact. I try to get home at least 3 to 4 nights a week to spend at least an hour with my kids before they go to bed. But that makes weekends even more important for our time together. And while there's usually a litany of activities planned, this past weekend was a bit of a tamer weekend with weather and an extra day off for MLK holidays and so few people around. So a few of those hours were spent with each kid, putting together new Lego sets and putting back together older Lego sets that have since fallen on hard times. Legos. I loved them as a kid, and that's been passed on to both of my kids. But I love that it's become a part of my mental wellness routine now as an adult as well. It's kind of like a de-stressor, both in terms of together time with the kids, but also for the distracted sense of accomplishment that it can provide. And apparently I'm not alone, because Lego is increasingly appealing to adults. I never thought about it before, but I found myself looking forward to that disconnect time. And because the licensing partnerships span everything from Star Wars and Disney and Marvel and DC Comics, or just those classic police and Fire City sets, meaning there's truly something for everybody. I just have to not get upset when the kids or their friends break a set that we worked tirelessly on to get just right. Also, disclaimer, I injured myself working on Legos a bit aggressively this weekend, so still working on that mental wellness stuff. Sitting on the aisle on a cross-country flight back to New York from the West Coast last week, I found myself waging a mid-flight battle with a woman sitting next to me in the middle seat. Now, this was a very late booking on a totally full flight, and I was lucky to get an aisle seat near the back of the plane. Now, I will caveat that even for all of my flying, I never have issues with other travelers. I only talk to people when talked to. I will happily stand if you need to use a lavatory. I'll even pass your trash to the flight attendant when they're collecting it. But this middle seat terrorist woman crossed a line, both literally and figuratively. And for that, she must be exposed. Now, for anyone who's ever been on an airplane, you know that there are natural, obvious divisions of space between seats. So for her to put her entire left leg and foot on the floor underneath the seat directly in front of me, she was knowingly encroaching beyond that commonly respected imaginary dividing line that separates seats, across a demarcation of personal space and comfort that is already limited by a deep row coach seat on a 6-hour flight. Now, this was a personal affront that started early, and one that I knew I could not tolerate. At first, I asked her for some space, politely, in case she was unaware of her transgression. No response, just an eye roll and a further spreading of the leg. She had a big bag underneath the seat in front of her, so she assumes that my empty floor space is hers to usurp. Fuck that. So I put my foot down, directly on top of hers, still well within the space underneath the seat in front of me. She tried to kick me, but wouldn't move. Then I plugged in my laptop power cord and the AC adapter in the middle space, in between the seats underneath, to create a physical division of space. Didn't faze her, and she kept knocking my cord out to further spread. That was the last straw. After all reasonable attempts at compromise, I began to cross my leg over to her side, accidentally spilled water all over her, and then began coughing loudly in her direction, even though I feel fine and I'm not sick. This battle continued for 5 hours. Of course, thanks to some clever sleuthing on my part, I know her name, where she works. I even know people in common with her and her boss. So it's time to out her here as the villain and terrible human being that she is. Her name is... One of the biggest challenges in our industry is the legality around exclusivity. MSAs and contracts often set up very clear, very immutable rules for how companies can engage with respect to multiple companies or brands within a competitive landscape. You can't serve Pepsi in a sports stadium with a Coke contract. You can't use Amex anywhere near an Olympics event because the IOC has a Visa partnership. And similarly, McDonald's global relationship with FIFA means other QSR restaurant chains are basically blocked out from major soccer and football properties. But there are always creative ways in, and not even McDonald's exclusive deal with FIFA could keep Burger King out of EA's FIFA 2020 video game, one of the most popular video games in the world. And that's because BK, Burger King, sponsored the jerseys of Stevenage, an English soccer team in the 4th Division. And when FIFA's ultimate gaming mode, whether you're a professional esports player all the way down to an amateur, you could choose any jersey of any club team and make your sort of dream team. And with BK's deal with Stevenage, they're in the game. And players can put together their team with Messi and Ronaldo and Neymar, Suarez, Mbappe, whoever. Cleverly, BK has challenged gamers, even high-level esports players, to play with Stevenage BK jerseys. Then they can complete challenges and upload photos and footage to Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram. And then those people are eligible for free Burger King food. This has created millions of impressions for Burger King in and around the esports space, the EA FIFA space, and the internet overall, circumventing McDonald's probably multi-million-dollar partnership. This idea brilliantly blurs the line between online and offline. The Iowa caucuses are now 2 weeks away, and things remain as divided as ever within the Democratic primary field. There are realistically only 3 candidates at this point who can win it now: Biden, Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. And there are some clear divisions personally, but also in some nuances of the policy. Now, in my own policy breakdowns, I've already covered the basics of healthcare and gun safety reform for dummies. Not that most voters are. Well, they are, but this is certainly not from a lack of information and clarity of communication. Anyway, next up, let's do climate change. Okay. This one is among the most baffling of topics for me because it's kind of an obvious thing that everyone should just agree on. There's no downside in pushing forth change because climate change is being exacerbated by human activity. It's plain and simple. Every respected scientist agrees. The only people on Earth fighting against the science are the lobbyists or owners of companies who make the products that are harming the environment. And the politicians they pay, of course. But let me ask you this. Even if you're unsure about the science or maybe ignorant about it, doesn't the risk and threat of damage and long-term potential harm far outweigh any benefit? This is where I'm lost. Why risk it? What's the downside here? Why not do anything and everything possible to protect the planet for future generations, even if you don't understand why? Trump in Davos today called people advocating for climate change some, doom and gloom people. And you know what? It's actually true, because doom and gloom is real. Now, I think for me, it's just really a fear of people being exposed as ignorant on this topic, and that's not a good enough reason. So come on board and let's do everything we can to fight any further destruction to our planet. Water, air, and land. Let's all meet in the middle and figure out how to protect future generations who are going to live on this planet.